guys, it's Soda here, welcome back to another video. Today I'm making another animal care guide video, and it's actually been a little while since I've made one of these. But today I'm doing a care guide on Firebelly Newts. Now I have made a couple of videos on my Firebelly Newts before, because I actually raised them from eggs last year. I had a lot of fun at raising them, and I did make a couple of videos talking about how I did that. But since having these guys for about a year now, I've really enjoyed having them, and I think they're really awesome pets. And I don't know a lot of people that actually have them as pets. Like, I don't know if there's many people on YouTube that have them as pets. I have no idea. I feel like they're kind of uncommon and kind of underrated because I love them. I think they're awesome, and I also think that they're actually the easiest pet that I own. And I don't really like to say that an animal is easy, but just for me personally, and compared to all the other animals that I have, I do find my Firebelly Newts to be the easiest pet out of all of them. But still, please watch this video because it doesn't mean that it's going to be easy for everyone. But if you're someone who already has a lot of experience with a lot of different kinds of animals, like fish or frogs and stuff, then you'll probably find these guys pretty easy. But that's what I'm here for today, to help talk to you about how to care for them, what you'll need, and what to expect. There's the Chinese Firebelly Newt and the Japanese Firebelly Newt. Now I have Chinese Firebelly Newts, but their care is the same. So this video is about both of those species, but there are some differences about them that you should definitely be aware of. The most important thing you should be aware of about these guys is that they are poisonous. Both of these guys are a toxic species, however the Japanese Firebelly Newt is a lot more toxic. Surprisingly, despite how small and tiny and cute they are, the Japanese Firebelly Newt is actually deadly if ingested. Now the Chinese Firebelly Newt is less toxic, however they still do produce toxins. So basically these guys, you can probably tell just by their colors that they're basically telling predators that they are toxic. These guys can produce toxins from their glands as the defense mechanism against predators. The Japanese Firebelly Newt is actually one of the most poisonous amphibians in the entire world, but you do have to eat it to be affected by it. Now I have heard that sometimes even handling these guys can cause irritations to your skin. I've not experienced that personally, although I very rarely touch them, but there is something to keep in mind that can still happen when touching them, so it's best to avoid touching them. I mean, they are amphibians anyway, so you're not really supposed to touch amphibians in the first place because they have very sensitive skin. But you know, if you do have to handle them for whatever reason, try not to handle them for too long. Make sure your hands are damp, make sure to wash your hands afterwards as well, and probably use gloves just to be safe. I mean, I've handled my guys without any problems, but I very rarely touch them. And definitely don't eat them, which I feel like goes without saying, but if you do eat a Japanese Firebelly Newt, you have about 6 hours left, so don't eat them. So yeah, hopefully that didn't scare you away from them, but it is important to be aware that these guys are a poisonous animal. But you shouldn't worry too much. Like, it's pretty easy to avoid eating a newt, but you still have to be a bit careful when handling them. But they're not really the kind of animal that you handle anyway. They're more just the kind of animal that you just look at. Are you eating my hair? Now the reason why I think these guys are so much easier is because they don't require any specific special lighting or heating, and they can live happily in fairly small enclosures compared to other animals anyway. You can probably see by the videos, my guys are still very small. They are only about a year old, so mine are still like babies pretty much, but they don't get much bigger than that. But I've heard they can get to about 3 to 6 inches, but they do take a while to get that big. So tank or terrarium size obviously depends on how many you want to get. I have mine in a tank with a mesh lid that I made. You definitely do need a lid with these guys. They do climb walls, so they will likely escape without a lid. Now I think that 10 gallons would be like a good size for maybe a couple of babies. 20 gallons is your best bet, and depending on how many you have, 20 gallons might actually be fine for their whole life. That's the size I have mine in, and I have 8 Chinese Firebelly Newts, but keep in mind, mine are still only a year old. They're still very small, so I may need to upgrade that in the future, but for now, they barely take up that space. So I won't talk too much about their larvae stage and how to care for that, because I've pretty much already made like 2 whole videos on that. So if you want to see like step by step how to care for them from being eggs to morphing, then watch that video, because they do start off being fully aquatic when they're in their larvae stage, and then as they age. I think it took about 3 or 4 months until they lost their external gills and then they came out of the water. And then for the next 2 years, these guys will be spending most of their time on land. So while they're about 1 to 2 years old, it's best to have more land than water area because they spend more time on land. However, they do still spend a bit of time in water, so it's good to have a good amount of water as well. But you'll definitely see them more on land. And once they're around 2 years old and they're like more adults, they spend more time in the water. So then you can increase your water area and decrease your land area. But still, you always need to have both because they do spend time out of water and in water, but they switch between different stages of their life. As adults, they will spend more time in the water, and then you can start potentially breeding them. I've heard they're very easy to breed, so I would like to try that in the future because there aren't many people that breed these guys where I live. And these guys do like the cold water too, so you don't need to have a heater or anything, but it is best to keep their enclosure to be under 25 degrees Celsius, which is like 75 degrees Fahrenheit. It's best not to let it get any hotter than that because they can become stressed. Now, I actually don't have a filter in my newt tank at the moment, but I do think that it's probably a good idea to have one if possible. The reason why I don't is because my water level is still pretty low that I can't really fit a filter in there. I did try to have one at the start, like a little sponge filter, but it barely did anything because it barely fit in the water. So I've just been having no filter for a while and I haven't had any issues. I also forgot to say that these guys don't like to have too much flow in their tank. So you don't want to have a filter that creates too much flow that will stress them out. In the wild, these guys, obviously Chinese newts live in China, Japanese newts live in Japan, but their environments are very, very similar. They live near streams, but they live in the puddles of streams basically, so there's no water movement in there, so keep that in mind too. Sponge filter would probably be the best bet. They don't really create much flow, so I definitely recommend that. Now I do have a lot of plants in my tank, which helps. I've got it full of duckweed and some other plants just floating around in there. For some reason the plants do super well in that tank. I don't really know why, but they do. So I haven't had any water quality issues, but it is always important to keep an eye on your water quality because like all aquatic or semi-aquatic animals, it is very important to keep your water clean. And if your water's not clean and it's getting full of poop or old food, they could end up with some kind of bacterial infection. So you should still be doing water changes just like you would with like a fish tank. Now I just do like partial water changes once every like 2 weeks or so. I don't do it as often as I do my fish tanks just because they don't spend much time in the water. They don't poop in there or anything, so it doesn't get really dirty. But once they're like adults and spending more time in the water, I'll probably need to clean them more often because then they'll be eating from there and pooping in there, and yeah. But at the moment, it doesn't get very dirty. But it is always good to keep on hand a water testing kit, which I always have for my fish tanks. And I think it's always good to have one if you have any kind of aquatic or semi-aquatic animal, just in case maybe they seem sick or one of them died or something, you're not sure why. It's always best to check your water quality first to make sure that's not an issue. Make sure it is easy for them to get out of the water, by the way. I've noticed these guys are very clumsy and will fall off things super easily, especially when they're like attacking food or something, like attacking a tiny little worm. They flip out and like fall in the water, which is kind of funny, but also it's important that they can get out of the water easily. So have plenty of different areas where they can climb up easy to get back onto land. Now for food, these guys can eat pretty much anything, honestly. As babies, like as larvae, they're a bit harder to feed because you have to have very tiny live food like live brine shrimp or live daphnia, which can be a little more challenging to have fresh live food every single day. But as they got bigger and they were able to eat white worms, so much easier. Now white worms are very easy to breed. They're just these little small white worms that you can just breed in a container of like moist dirt. You can just put some like damp bread in there and they'll eat that, and they're super easy to breed. Newts love them. This is like the main food that I feed them. They can eat them in water and out of water, and these white worms can actually survive in water for a few days, so it's really helpful. Fruit flies, another good thing. I like to feed my guys fruit flies as well. You can get wingless fruit flies, which they still have wings, but they can't fly, I guess. I don't know how it works, but you can buy them at like pet stores. That's where I got mine from, or you can just set up a fruit fly trap. Very easy to do that. But also keep in mind that fruit flies can escape through the tiniest of holes, even just through mesh, so you might end up with fruit flies everywhere. You can also feed them frozen bloodworms or live bloodworms. That's usually best to feed them when they're in the water, so when they're a bit older probably. And then once they're bigger, they can eat things like crickets and mealworms, and honestly they can eat pretty much anything. Usually what I do is I get like a clump of white worms from my white worm container, put it in the enclosure, and they'll all run to it and they'll just know it's there. So yeah, super easy. And that was one thing I was worried about, because I thought maybe there'd be like axolotls where you have to like hand feed them every day, but you don't. They will know where the food is. So very easy. And yeah, these guys don't need any special lighting. They don't need UVB or heat lighting or anything. I think these guys are actually considered to be nocturnal. However, I always see mine during the day and they're always very active, like at all hours, but I think they're nocturnal. I just have some LED lights just so I can see them better, and that's all. Like, it's very easy. And they're just so cool. Like, I did not expect these guys to be so active, but they are really active. I see them at all hours of the day, hanging out on their little piece of driftwood in there, or waiting for food. They're all like clumped together sometimes, and it's super cute. They're really funny because they are really clumsy and just fall off things all the time. Yet they can also kill you, so always sleep with one eye open. And yeah, they are a pet that you can't really handle all the time. They're more of a pet that you observe, but I don't really mind that. I mean, I love watching them. I'll just sit there in front of the tank and watch them for like ages, which is kind of weird, but they're just so fun to watch, honestly. If you have been wanting to get them for a while and you know, you're all prepared, I do highly recommend them. I think they're really awesome and underrated pets. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope this video could help you. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comments and I might be able to get back to you, or someone else might. But I think I pretty much covered everything. They're really cute. They have a lot of personality, honestly. They're awesome little guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Bye!